Thanks for checking out this YouTube video. This is taken from a webinar we did with a lady called Kate Sun, who is an intellectual property lawyer based in Sydney in Australia. She did it for the Aussie online entrepreneurs. If you want to find out more about Kate, there's some links underneath. We've also got a lot more from Kate as far as protecting your Amazon business, trademarks, intellectual property, patents, and things like that. So make sure you subscribe to this channel to find out more. With that being said, let's get on with the video.
So how do you register a trademark? As I said, it must be used as a trademark. So what that means is it has to be capable of indicating a source or origin. So that links back to your brand and your products over that of other sellers. It can't be descriptive, so it has to be this capable of distinguishing. And it can't be substantially identical or deceptively similar. Now, although these two things sound pretty similar, they actually are looked at slightly differently. So substantially identical is more so around the visual appearance, and deceptively similar can move into the phonetics as well. So such as emoji and emoji, well, they sound sort of quite similar. So, they may have got a deceptively similar. These two here, if you look at the actual logos, they're very, very similar. So they would be substantially identical. But, it all depends. There is a set of criteria that the trademark examiners use from a trademark office manual that they go through and use to examine your mark. But like anything that involves a human, there is a form of bias, and where some examiners might think, oh, no, there's no difference. Others, where there is actually a clear difference, will be quite stubborn and find that there's no difference. So it just, sometimes you can address things by, argument alone, other times you can't. Registration, requirements for registration. Now, I know that lots of people have come up with their brands and think, well, it's registering a trademark is a cost. I'll put that aside and I'll do it once I'm making some sales. And they go ahead and they have that brand on all of their socials. They have it on, they've got the domain, they create a website, they create their listing. It's all over their product, either their actual product or their packaging. And then it comes to the point that they decide, now it's time to get a trademark. And they find that actually they can't get one. And that's because their mark is descriptive. So what that means is that it's describing what they're actually selling. So a descriptive trademark will never be found to be registrable unless you've got like 10 years worth of sales data to support the fact that you have established a reputation in the marketplace for that mark. If you're a new seller though, you've basically got no chance in hell of ever getting a registered trademark for that descriptive mark. So before going into your branding, think about this little pyramid and think that you want it to be as fanciful or arbitrary or unique as possible, because the more unique your mark is, the more protectable it's going to be. The more generic it is, the least protectable and the easiest it is for a competitor to get around your branding, because you're not going to have protection around it. So distinctiveness is key to a good trademark. So Amazon brand registry, you have to have a trademark. So it's key and it's territorial. So what I mean by territorial is that you need to get that trademark in each of the various jurisdictions that or marketplaces that you want to sell in. Now you can, say, get a trademark in Australia and apply for US brand registry after you've applied for Australian brand registry. And the last time I did that, it was still possible. However, the downside to that is that if you did get a hijacker and tried to put in an infringement claim through the brand registry component of Amazon, Amazon won't take any action because you don't have a trademark in that country. And I found that out firsthand. So you have to be very mindful of that. And if going into several marketplaces is your ultimate goal, then consider, filing in Australia and then within 6 months filing in the US or vice versa, just to ensure that you've got, the runway of all of the marks coming along. It only provides coverage in the relevant markets where registered, as I said. It provides a much stronger protection in the case of a dispute. And each country is going to be slightly different. So you're either a first to file or you're a first to use country. So I'll get to that in 2 slides' time. But the thing to note here is the big old highlighted yellow section, which is, so typically Amazon brand registry used to only be available if you had a registered trademark, which sort of sucked in Australia because there was no way to really fast track your Australian registration. Now, and then Amazon brought in the IP accelerator program, which was a bit of a rort in that if you went with one of their lawyers, paid a nice pretty penny, they got you unlocked for brand registry within, a week or so. They've now brought in, it's only for the US as far as I can find so far, that you can apply for brand registry on the basis of an application in the US within about 3 days of filing that application. So when you file an application in the US, you get a serial number as soon as you file. Now, why I say about 3 days is because it's the time taken for the US PTO to update their register to get that serial number active. So sometimes it could be literally overnight. Sometimes it might take up to 3 days. Sometimes if they are doing maintenance on the site, it may take up to a week because Amazon needs to be able to go to the US PTO to find that serial number to make sure it correlates with what you're saying. But I have had lots of AOE clients that have managed to get brand registry in the US within about 3 days. Now, that's not possible yet in Australia. You still are stuck with the old registration. You need to wait till it's registered. But if you're going US, then you can get it pretty damn quickly, which is really good.
Kate, could I make one little comment to that as well? Something that you mentioned previously with regards to the Amazon's own IP accelerator program and using their lawyers, which on the surface seems like a reasonable idea. But as you mentioned, if there's any problems whatsoever with actually getting the mark, if there's any additional searches to be done or any additional work to be done, which there frequently is, then the costs very quickly escalate over and above the stated prices that's shown on the IP accelerator website.
That's right. They back end a little, so they lure you in, and with the hope that you can get brand registry really quickly. But yes, if there are any objections raised or anything like that, then you'll suddenly be forking out quite a lot more than other attorneys.
Mm.
Okay, so in terms of the times for registration, it's very varied. So depending on where you're looking, it can be anywhere between 3 months if you're looking at a European or German mark is probably the quickest, to up to about 24 months for China, depending on their examination at the time. So it's so ridiculously inconsistent across the various jurisdictions. Most people will be looking at either Australia or US first. Australia, the quickest you can get one is 7.5 months from the filing date. You can get actual early acceptance around 1 to 2 months, but Amazon will not accept that for brand registry purposes yet. And that's only if you use the Head Start program, because you'll basically, if you get a clear report in the preliminary report, then you'll get an early acceptance within about 4 weeks from the filing date. And the 7.5 months, though, is because Australia is a party to the Paris Convention, which means that all of the countries that are a part of or were parties to that treaty, what you can do is that you can file in any one of those countries, and then you have 6 months to file in any of the other countries that are a party to that treaty, and you get protection back to your original filing date. So that's really, really handy and really important, because it allows you to stagger the costs. So, trademarks, like any form of IP, can be quite expensive, and the costs can add up really quickly. So you can stagger it such that you can file in Australia, and then you can use that Australian filing to go into the US within 6 months, and go in at any point in time and have that payment deferred until that time. In terms of first to file or first to use, so what does it mean? So basically, first to file countries. So you could be using your trademark in a particular country for many, many, many years. For example, China. So you could be using it for a long time, and then your supplier sees and goes, "Oh, you've been placing lots of orders recently. I'm going to go and register that trademark in China, because it looks like I could, use that as a bit of a leverage to you, or I could go and try and copycat," and they will be able to do so. And similar countries to first to file are Japan, UK, and Europe. So you really have to consider what your marketplaces are going to be, and build your IP strategy around that. Other countries like Australia, Canada, US, India, we're first to use. So just because someone files a trademark, if you can show that actually you have been using it and selling products for any period of time before the trademark applicant, in association with the sale of goods and services in that same sort of class, then you will be able to either oppose their mark, or you can file to cancel their mark, because you are the rightful owner of that mark, because you have established a reputation. Just being mindful of time, I know that I've got to keep moving, but this happens to the best of us, because this happened to me. So I, thought, no, I'm not going to. I've got lots of various different trademarks, and I thought, I'm not going to file yet another one to add to my collection yet, until I have gone past is this Amazon thing just another one of my harebrained ideas, or am I going to stick to it, sort of thing. So I started selling on Amazon in the USA as I said, in December 2018. My first product actually took off and did really well. And so in March 2019, I filed in both Australia and US. Well, I think it was a week before my filing, some bastard decided to file in the US. So I am in the final stages of getting their application cancelled. It's all, on track. But that's not to say that it hasn't cost quite a bit and it hasn't been very stressful along the way. Because whilst I had brand registry in the US based on my Australian filing, I wasn't able to get the US registration yet while this case is still sort of open-ended. I should be able to get it in the next sort of couple of weeks. But it is something to be very mindful of, that whilst we used to say, oh yeah, let's wait till you got $5,000 worth of sales, etc. These days, because it is becoming so much more important to have a mark, I would say think sooner rather than later. If you want to file in Australia and the US, file in Australia first, because what it does is not only is it cheaper, but it allows you a sort of a loophole that you don't have to provide evidence of use. It's the only sort of benefit given to foreigners in the US for this type of thing, because it is just based on your Australian filing, or whatever your priority country is, instead of having to select a basis. So when you file in the US, you either have to select a basis of use, which is either actual use or intent to use. And if it's actual use, then you have to provide evidence, and evidence is just photos. But if it's intent to use, then you've got a limited period of time in which you have to show that you are actually using it and provide that evidence. As I mentioned before, Amazon is sort of, because there's so many people now jumping out and trying to get a registered trademark, Class 35 used to be a pretty easy class to get because it's a service class. The USPTO is now asking for the evidence to show either a standalone website, a Shopify site, or an Amazon storefront, but the Amazon storefront has to show more than one product. If it's got just one product, it won't be allowable anymore. And similarly with a Facebook storefront, if you've only got one product. I'll show just photos of evidence in just a sec. Make your brand names as made up or as unique as possible, because that avoids the lack of distinctiveness and potential objections. The majority of objections can be addressed by argument unless you have a super descriptive or generic name. As I said, it's pretty hard to address those because, if you've got, Jim's outdoor goods and you're selling outdoor goods, then you're never going to get that up because it's just describing what you're selling. So no matter how much cash you throw into that, it is basically 99% chance that it's never going to be able to address the examiner's objection. On most other objections, however, depending on the amount of evidence you've got, so how long you've been selling or how much cash you want to put into it, you will be able to address it. So when I talk about evidence of use in the States, this here, it's just, let me see if I can blow this up. It's just showing one product. That's going to be rejected if you are filing in Class 35 online retail. But if you show a storefront that has, like 20 different products or this sort with all of these products, then that will be approved because it's showing that you do in fact have a retail presence. not just a single product presence. For a product class, the evidence of use that you would need to provide would be to show either the brand name or logo somewhere on the actual product or the packaging. And when it says that you need to provide a specimen, that's not a physical specimen, it's just photographs showing the actual products using, or either the product or the packaging using that mark.